If your hip is constantly snapping or clicking or popping, I'm gonna show you a couple of exercises in this video that will help you get instant results, decreasing the significance and also frequency of when that stuff happens. Now, it's key to first understand that there's a difference between snapping and clicking and popping. Typically, when there's snapping sounds in the hip, the tendons on the front side of the hip are restricted in their ability to properly move with the femur, and they can't either elongate or potentially shorten in a way that would be conducive to how that femur would be sliding within the hip socket. And this can occur typically when there's a restriction in either the internal rotation or external rotation of your leg bone right here. And with clicking and popping, it's not quite the same thing. Typically in those circumstances, the fluid that's within our joints, it's not properly able to move into a given position when you see rotation or movement within that hip joint. And or what you're seeing is that the fluid is moving into a position that it hasn't in some period of time. So let's say, for example, the femur is constantly stuck in one position and it can't effectively move into the other, or vice versa. If the hip is constantly hanging out in this position, and then it moves into the other position, the fluid is going to shift in a way that it hasn't in some relative amount of time that is long for that joint. So you're going to hear or feel popping or clicking when that leg goes into a position that it doesn't access very frequently. It's not to say that it can't access that position, it just doesn't do it on somewhat of a relative regular basis. And again, this can occur usually because of a limitation in internal or external rotation of the femur or leg bone right here. So let's just assess these and see what we're limited in. First, just sit on a table and you can assess how well, keeping your thighs in line with your hips, your shin and your ankle can rotate away from you without any other part of your body moving even a little bit. This would be internal rotation. For external rotation, it's just the opposite. Just pull your passive leg back a little bit by bending the knee. Don't actually shift your hips. Your knees should still stay relatively in line with each other. And then you're just going to swing that shin inwards towards you, and that is external rotation. You're going to notice that one or both of these things is limited. Generally speaking, we like to see 40 degrees of internal rotation and upwards of 45 to 60 degrees of external rotation. Now I'm going to show you two exercises to improve both internal rotation and two exercises to improve external rotation. These should make a difference in how much you're feeling clicking and popping when you move into certain positions or that snapping sensation. This is the first exercise for if you're limited in external rotation. You're going to start in this position with your hands underneath your shoulders, knees underneath your hips. And you're going to take one leg and straighten it. You're going to be stretching out the leg that's on the ground. So as opposed to doing a traditional pigeon stretch like this, where people kind of just roll their hips all around, we're going to do it a little bit more strategically. So what I want you to do is pivot from your knee and move into external rotation only as much as you can before you feel like if you went any further, you would have to twist your hips in some awkward direction. So if it's just a little bit, that's fine. But for me, I can go to probably right here before I feel like there's any tension in my hip or something doesn't feel 100% comfortable. Now what you'll do is, keeping that back leg straight, you're just gonna drop down to your elbows, keeping your hips square. You don't wanna dip your hip down. You wanna make sure that your hips are level with the ground. And that's going to allow you to get a nice stretch and length through the back side of the hip there. Now what I want you to do is inhale through your nose, reach that heel behind you just a little bit. Notice how my toes stay in the same position. I'm just reaching my heel back like this. Exhale and relax. Inhale, very subtly reach that heel back a little bit. Exhale, melt into it. The key here is not to force it. If you start to feel the stretch literally anywhere besides right through here on the backside of your hip, then you are moving into too much what we call hip flexion or hip bend. So if it's more comfortable for you, you can just be on your hands like this, or you can just not reach the heel back, or you can just hang out in this position. But don't force it to the point where if you go so far back, you're going to feel it anywhere in the front of your hip. If you're limited in internal rotation, start with this. Again, hands underneath shoulders, knees underneath hips to start. Now, keeping this knee bent, the one that you're gonna stretch out, you're not really gonna move that leg, but you're gonna take the other leg and bring it around so that way your knee on this side is now on the outside of the knee on the side you're stretching out. So I'm stretching out my right side and I'm bringing my left knee just to the outside of my right upper shin, lower knee. And I should already feel a slight bit of stretch in the backside of my right hip, just a tiny, tiny bit. But we're gonna increase that by dropping down to our elbows like this. And now I have a stretch in the backside of my right hip only and a tiny, tiny bit on the outside right about here. But for the most part, it's concentrated through here. And I'm gonna sit here and breathe through this position, in through my nose, out through my mouth. Now the key here, again, is no tension anywhere other than the back of the hip. If you feel it in the front of the hip whatsoever, it's no good. You are in too much hip bend. So you need to get up here onto your hands and just rock back a little bit, and that will be easier. And if you're not feeling enough of a stretch, what you could do is slowly reach this arm up more and more of the opposite side you're stretching, and that will help you get deeper into that right hip if you reach your left arm. The other thing you can do is slowly extend this leg and reach it across like this, but this one is a little bit more risky because it is going to potentially put your hip in a position to feel a pinch in the front of the hip if you don't have the mobility to get into this position. So just go nice and safe. Just slowly straighten the leg with each slow breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. If you really care about improving the health and mobility of your hips for the long term, check out my beginner body restoration, because the exercises in this video, they're really tailored towards the hips themselves, but it doesn't take a full body approach, which is absolutely key. We have to consider things at the foot, what's happening at the rib cage, what's happening at the head, and everywhere else within the body if we really care about the hips being able to move to their full capacity without any pain or dysfunction. So if you want to learn how to do that, check out that beginner body restoration program. I will link it down below in the description. If you're limited in external rotation, this is the second more dynamic exercise. Now you're gonna be in this position where you have a 90-degree bend at this knee right here, maybe a little bit less if it's more comfortable. And on this leg, it's generally straight out from your side. And you can move it maybe a little bit forward if that makes you more comfortable, but you generally want to have it straight out here. And you're going to take your hands and slightly stagger them like this. So if my right leg is in front, I'm going to have my left hand in front of the middle of my right shin. I'm going to have my right hand just behind my knee right here. Now what I'm going to do is stay tall. I'm going to slightly lean forward, just a tiny bit. I'm going to feel even pressure from the outside of my right knee down to the outside of my right ankle, and I am going to just push through this leg primarily into the floor and a little bit of the inside of the knee on this leg. And I'm going to lift myself off of the ground, and I'm going to feel a little bit of my glute contract, or a lot bit of my glute contract depending on the person, on this right side right here of the front leg. I'm going to hold this for about 3 to 5 seconds, and I'm going to come back down. I'm going to reset, relax everything, and then come up. Most of the pressure in my hand is through my right side to prop me up a little bit. I'm just kind of using this left hand as a placeholder for support and stability. I'd recommend 10 reps of about 3 to 5 second holds. This is the second exercise for if you're limited in internal rotation. It's a little bit more dynamic. So either grab a foam roller or a ball that's kind of compressible. This is generally better, but a foam roller could work. You want a pillow underneath your head and neck so that way your head can be nice and neutral, and you want your knees and hips bent at a 90-degree angle each respectively. So take that ball and put it in sort of like just behind your knees in this range right here. You can go a little bit deeper if you want, whatever is just generally comfortable, and you want your feet stacked on top of each other. You also want your shoulder not rolled too forward or back. You want generally just a straight line going from the bottom shoulder to top shoulder up to the ceiling. Now, keeping your feet stacked on top of each other, you're going to inhale through your nose and very gently roll your top knee ahead of the bottom knee, just a tiny bit, maybe 1 to 2 inches max. And then you're going to exhale and push up into the ball very gently with the bottom knee, not letting this top knee move back. You're going to feel your inner thigh adductor muscle engaged on this bottom side. The top side leg doesn't feel much engaged at all. And you're going to maintain this for about 3 seconds. Then relax a little bit on the downside
and roll that top knee just an inch further. And then exhale again, go up into the ball. The pressure going up into the ball is literally like a 3 out of 10 effort. It's not much at all. And if you go more than that, you might feel a cramp within your lower body, your hip flexor, or something like that. So that means you're going too hard. Also, watch out. You might want to engage your neck. Check in with yourself and make sure it's relaxed the entire time. There should be no tension anywhere in your body other than that inner thigh adductor muscle working. If you feel a pinch in your hip or something uncomfortable in your hip, what I strongly recommend is just simply lowering your knees down just a little bit like this, restarting the process, and then going again like this. So the way that this works is you're going to keep rolling forward till you can't go forward anymore without your groin cramping, or it's going to feel uncomfortable, or potentially you just don't have any more space to go without moving your low back. So that's only going to be about 2 to 3 total shifts forward of that top knee for most people. And that is 1 rep. So I recommend doing about 5 to 10 reps per side.
I'd recommend doing each of these exercises in the order that they're presented, somewhere between 2 to 4 times per day. Now, that would be ideally 2 sets in the morning, 2 sets at night. So try that for a couple of weeks, and you should start to see more and more long-term success. Thank you guys for watching, and if you like this type of video, let me know down below in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.